Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Brentwood Baptist Leadership Podcast. I'm Stephanie Prince. This month, every episode is focused on connections, helping churches build pathways for people to belong, serve, and grow. These conversations are all leading up to the Elevate Church Conference on September 21st and 22nd, 2026. Today, I'm joined by Michelle Dyer, and we're talking about identifying gifts and helping people use them well within the life of the church. Let's jump in. So, Michelle, why is helping people discover and use their gifts in the church such an important piece of our community?
So many reasons. I think, of course, the first and foremost of those reasons is because Jesus commanded us to be disciples who make disciples.
Yeah.
And so I think that helping a person understand what that looks like in their life and ultimately what is that calling in their life look like is so important. And it changes the face of the church. It changes the culture. It changes the passion and the zeal of the mission. So it really does help every person feel like their contribution is important and required even for the body to be what God designed it to be.
Yeah. And so flipping that on its head too, like what happens when people don't find their giftings and don't know where to contribute in the church?
Yeah. Well, I think we've all at one point experienced a church where there was just kind of Sunday morning, and everybody comes and enjoys that pew, and enjoys their spot. And then nothing really happens after that. The life, the vibrancy of the church just doesn't become what it could be. And
I love that word vibrancy.
I don't know where that came from, but
I don't know, but I like it. It's a good description of a healthy church is that it's vibrant.
Yeah.
And it's life-giving.
Exactly. And that people are really engaged, not just on Sunday morning, but every day of the week in their communities, in their workplaces, in their families. They know who they are. They know how God has wired and gifted them to serve others, their brothers and sisters in Christ, as well as those who don't yet know Jesus.
Yeah.
So
how does somebody discover those gifts?
Well, I think there are lots of great ways to help people explore that. But I once heard or read in a blog somewhere that, our calling is something that a terrain that we have to tread. So it requires exploration. It requires tools that really help us get in and define and describe who we are in Christ. And so I love to use all kinds of assessments. Here in our membership process, we use a spiritual gifts inventory that helps people, kind of process what are their gifts according to 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12. But then we also go another step further to help them explore their personality, some of their characteristics that describe them. And we look at what is a person's passion. What are they really passionate about doing? Or who are they passionate about serving?
Yeah.
We also look at their skills. What kinds of skills could you use for kingdom work? So I'm a firm believer that you really have to give people practical tools as well as the concepts of, hey, you are called, Ephesians 4. God has called you to a unique ministry. But you can't just give them that concept without giving them something practical.
Yeah, I feel like there's a danger of staying too high level in that.
There is.
Like, you're called. Okay, well, that is a true fact.
Right. Now what? Exactly.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of times I've heard someone ask that question, and I've heard churches, say, hey, we really want you to get out there and serve, and then not give any kind of practical pathway or tool for exploration.
That's why I love using those assessments as tools, because I think they really help actually break down each of the spiritual gifts. And then you start to understand, like, oh, I see how the Lord has wired me in this way. Or, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that this was a spiritual gift.
Yes.
And I know for me, that was part of my story, like going through our Brentwood membership process back in 2013.
Yeah.
And, different assessments in different seasons, but it was a spiritual gifts assessment, and going through it and learning that hospitality and administration were two of my top spiritual gifts.
Yes, they are.
And I always thought, I've read the Bible several times.
Yeah.
I know about spiritual gifts, but I've always thought about like pulpit gifts. Like there are people that are well articulated preaching the gospel and they're spiritually gifted.
Right.
And like, what is administration and hospitality? How does this all work together?
Oh, my goodness.
And so it was through the membership process here at this church that I discovered my spiritual gifts and how I was uniquely wired and equipped and called to serve the kingdom. So
I love that.
they can be such helpful tools.
They really are. And I think, it just requires that we take time as church leaders to let every person explore that personally.
Yeah.
And that we give them multiple engagements with exploring it, and that we give them multiple angles of who they are in Christ to keep that fresh in their exploration, so that they're constantly thinking through, what is God doing in this season of my life?
Yeah.
And I think a really important piece of that is letting them talk to another leader who will help them process that. And that does not have to be a church staff person.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I love about our Discover coaching and our membership process.
Yes.
That last step is meeting with a connection coach or a Discover coach.
Yes.
And those are lay leaders where they get to meet one-on-one
Right.
and discuss their spiritual gifts.
Yes.
And so I think that's such a key piece to understanding.
It really is. It's just helpful on multiple levels. But
And it's a launching pad too.
it is.
Of like, once you can identify them, then you can start to figure out how you can actually serve and thrive in a kingdom community.
Exactly. And it requires, in addition to having some tools for people to use for exploration, we need to have our processes mapped out pretty well.
Yeah.
So that we have some very specific ministry opportunities to connect people to. So, we need on-ramps to serving that are very clear-cut and defined and easy to understand. We need to do diligent follow-up when people request involvement in those serving opportunities.
Yeah.
So, for our next-gen ministries, we want to lay out, hey, we have both classroom teachers and assistants, but we also have front desk hosts and greeters there where our families come into our next-gen area. And we have, job descriptions laid out for those roles so that our coaches, our Discover coaches, can help know what those roles are and suggest those specific roles to a church member who might know that they're passionate about working with kids. Here's all the different options you have for serving in those roles. So just well laid out processes and tools, I think, are really key.
Yeah. And then how do the leaders, like even our lay leaders or staff ministers, anybody kind of in between that too, like how do they help people use those tools or use what we've laid out in those job descriptions? What does that look like?
Well, I think it involves a lot of training for those lay leaders as well, which honestly has benefits of its own, that you're sort of pulling those lay leaders into the fold of the second tier of understanding about your church's mission. You're giving them a behind-the-curtain peek at, hey, this is what's going on behind the scenes. These are the systems, the processes we've set up to help engage those new members. That gives them an extra level of belonging, They're part of the mission of the church in an even deeper way.
It's part of them using their spiritual gifts.
Absolutely. Yes. And, they're understanding that they have an opportunity to lead someone in deeper discipleship, deeper engagement, but really training those lay leaders to know what's going on in your systems, your processes that will help new members to connect.
Yeah.
So,
and then how do we help people grow spiritually?
Yeah. Well, we all know that, we can learn every Sunday, and we do, church gathering together either in groups or in the worship service. Obviously, those are big parts of growth. But when we put feet to what we're learning in those settings by serving, that is just a whole other element of discipleship. And so giving people an outlet for all that they're learning, all the ways that God is changing them and transforming them, and giving them an opportunity to pour into someone else through a ministry opportunity is an obvious next step in their discipling process. So serving, being involved, definitely part of that growth and discipleship.
Mm-hmm. And then once someone's involved, like how do we make them feel special or seen or valued in their service?
Yeah. Well, I think we've all been in a situation where we've been serving because we were a warm body, you know?
Yeah.
And so if as a church leader, I can be very, intentional in talking to that church member and communicating them, hey, I care about getting you involved in the thing that you are really passionate about, the way you want to make a difference.
Yeah.
I care about taking the time to know you, to encourage you, develop you in those gifts. That can be pivotal in a life or a growth relationship.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you've had a situation where you had a good mentor or a person who said, hey, Steph, I see in you this ability, this skill, this talent, this gift.
Yeah.
And I want to do everything I can do to shepherd you in a way that helps you contribute to the kingdom using that God-given attribute.
I know I've experienced that, kind of transformation in my own mentorship and discipleship. And then I've seen the benefits of it too. I can think of a specific volunteer.
Yes.
And when I came on staff here, he was already serving, kind of like right-hand man. We were running a young adult ministry Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
And so he'd get here, 7:00 was the start time. He was here 4:30 every Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
He did all of our parking setup, all of our signage out, everything, up on a ladder, turning lights on. Like,
That's great.
I mean, top to bottom, set up and then clean up.
Yeah.
And I was like, how you're so faithful.
Yeah.
How did you get involved? And so because, I kind of inherited this wonderful volunteer into the ministry.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know. It's like, well, but like, I really do want to know. Like, tell me, how did you get involved?
Yes. What was the magic?
He was like, I don't know. I was picking up trash. I was like, what? And he's like, well, I would come to worship. He's an introvert.
Okay.
Gifts of serving helps. These are his spiritual gifts. He's got eyes for what needs to happen behind the scenes and a heart for it.
Yeah.
And so he would just stick around a few extra minutes and pick up trash on his way out. Never thought twice about it. Never thought about it as a piece of serving.
Wow.
It's just who he was. It's his nature.
Yeah.
And so then someone said, hey, while you're sticking around, I can't reach this. Can you come help me with this?
Yeah.
So he helped take down some lights. And then, oh, can you help me with the parking signs? Oh, can you?
Yes.
And it kind of just turned into this service role. And he was like, I don't know. And all of a sudden, it's been 15 years.
And hopefully behind that was a church leader who was really actually being very intentional about, hey,
Exactly. And so I saw the benefit from that as like a leadership standpoint, that someone else invested and saw that in him.
Yes.
And then cultivated it.
Yes.
Whereas he would just say, yeah, it's kind of who I am.
Yes.
Like, no, actually, that's really intentionally God-given gifts.
Yes.
And now you're serving to use them for the kingdom.
Absolutely. And that is just such a very important piece of the leadership pipeline in general. We really need people who will be very intentional, who have eyes out for those who are expressing a giftedness.
Yeah.
And serving in that way and calling that out in that person. And then spending intentional time to make sure they're involved in productive ways, because that is how we begin to grow and develop others. And really, in my opinion, that is one of our chief roles, along with intentional discipleship. As church leaders, as staff members, we're here not so much to do all the ministry, but to engage others in a way that they can come alongside in that mission. And that we equip them to be the saints, who do the ministry.
So if somebody wanted to start investing in spiritual gifts and helping people discover their spiritual gifts, where do they start?
Well, we can put in the show notes a good spiritual gifts assessment.
Awesome.
And there is actually a great company that's very passionate about helping churches devise this type of assessment process for themselves in a customized way.
Yeah.
But they also have some canned assessments that can be used where the church member isn't going to be spammed with email afterwards, but really just finding any kind of spiritual gifts inventory. And there are so many options that, we're happy to help them look for those assessments and find the ones that work. Starting with something like that, but there are many good assessments out there that can be used to help people explore those tools and those opportunities for themselves. So
Yeah, we're happy to help because it's so important.
It is.
It helps create the culture.
It really does.
So, like, what does an empowered culture look like in a church?
It looks like every member being a minister and every person in the pew, being connected, having knowing how God has called them to grow and serve, and having those conversations on the regular at every level of leadership about what God's calling looks like in their life. And staff who's committed to helping them discover that so that they can partake in the mission and the ministry.
Yeah.
So
I think it's all about the mission and the ministry.
It is.
I mean, God never intended us to be passive, participants sitting in a pew, consumerism. I mean, all of that stuff, that was never the intention for church.
No, not at all.
And so we gather and we go and we serve.
Yes.
And so there is so much importance. And I just appreciate you speaking into how we can cultivate and discover people's spiritual gifts and use that in a church setting.
I'm so passionate about that.
Thanks for joining us today, Michelle.
Thank you, Steph.
Thanks for listening today. When people discover and use their gifts, the whole church becomes healthier and stronger. If this conversation encouraged you, we'd love for you to join us at the Elevate Church Conference on September 21st to 22nd, 2026. You can register and learn more at elevatechurchconference.com. Thanks for listening to the Brentwood Baptist Leadership Podcast. I'll see you next week.